Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 22nd episode of Thru FM, and Happy New Year. Happy 2019. As you can tell from the title of the podcast/video, this is going to be my top 15 anticipated games from 2019. I haven't spoken on a purely FM standpoint since about November, although I did release my top 10 games of 2018 on the podcast feed itself. So hopefully you got a good listen out of all that stuff. And we're just going to jump into a couple of reviews and things to kind of round things out to get started. And then I'll jump into going through my top 15 most anticipated games of 2019. So if you missed on the channel, I have had actually a struggle with my most recent review. It was not showing up in a lot of people's subscription feeds, which is weird. I still got a fair amount of views on it, so probably from sharing on Instagram and Board Game Geek and stuff, but kind of strange. So I don't know what to tell you there. Seems like that's the only video that had a problem. So I don't know if it's a new problem or it was just a bug, or it's kind of some other weird things went on with the video. But so my most recent was New Frontiers, which is the Race for the Galaxy board game, which I absolutely love. Definitely watched that review. I like it at all the player counts. I haven't actually played it with 5 yet. But I think I like it with 2 the most, but I still really like it at the other player counts. And for right now, I think it's my favorites of the Race Roll, New Frontiers, kind of the trilogy of Race for the Galaxy games. But it's also brand new and stuff, so who knows. But right now, I think it's my favorite. And then the other 2 games I reviewed actually were both from Simon Inc., Victorian Masterminds and Narcos the board game. Victorian Masterminds definitely... the family group has liked it more. The game group was a little bit split on it, but most of us that played it liked it in the game group. It's from Eric Lang and Antoine Bauza, so the designer of Seven Wonders meets the designer of Blood Rage, so to speak. But a really fun, kind of lighthearted game with a lighthearted theme, and I definitely recommend that game for sure, especially for a casual kind of family group kind of atmosphere. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of kind of little mini surprises and things that can happen throughout the course of the game, and it plays pretty quick. It's really straightforward, all that stuff. But there's enough there to kind of chew on to keep you interested. It's not basic in any kind of way. And then Narcos, the board game, fantastic. Everybody that I've played this with has said that it kind of replaces Fury of Dracula, Scotland Yard, Hunt for the Ring, all that kind of stuff for them. So it's kind of a hidden movement, one versus many. One player's playing Pablo Escobar, basically, and it's based on the TV show, which is, of course, based on real-life exploits of Pablo Escobar, and the other players are DEA, federal police in Colombia, some other drug cartels that are competing. They're all kind of working together to unravel Pablo's operations, and it has a bunch of twists on the hidden movement style of game. I mean, it doesn't really play at all like those other games. I think that's why... everybody seems to really like it because it's kind of a breath of fresh air in terms of the mechanics and such. So those are all the current videos there for January I've put up so far. A couple other reviews I'll go into quickly that I haven't had a chance to do a video on. And unlike most times when I go through this list of games to talk about, there's not really any outright stinkers in this list. These are all very decent games, and I would definitely recommend them to varying degrees. To folks to at least take a look at. So let's get through the first one here. The first one is Auztralia, and this is from Stronghold Games, designed by Martin Wallace. And this is a very weird, different game. So it's actually a spiritual sequel to A Study in Emerald, which Martin Wallace has put out 2 editions of. It's kind of like a Sherlock Holmes smashed with Cthulhu deck building game. You can go dig up. I think I did a review of the 2nd edition. The 1st edition I actually didn't really care for. But Australia takes place, instead of in Europe, it takes place in Australia. And it's sort of like a railroad game. I don't know. It's not really like any railroad game I've played. But you're building railroads and kind of getting goods and stuff and delivering them. But then you're also using those rail lines to send out different types of troops and tanks and all that kind of stuff to fight all of these Lovecraftian demons, which, it's a railroad game where you fight Cthulhu. Really strange. There is kind of an issue that I didn't find so much of an issue. I did find it kind of an issue, and some folks in my group had a bigger problem with it. And then some other folks I've talked to online also, they've had the same kind of issue. So it's a semi-co-op, although you can play it as a co-op. And it's very easy for somebody to sort of get beat up by the game, and there's nothing really that the other players can do. Sometimes it's a little tricky to help out the other players so that they don't get knocked out and then end the game early. And then also, like, the combat is this card flipping thing, which is really cool. I like it mechanically, but when we played it, we had a few instances of like that taking a while. Now, it's not like 10 minutes to resolve combat, but just in sort of the pace of the normal part of the rest of the game, when you'd have combat, sometimes it would be kind of a long pause, just in comparison or relative to the rest of the game. But I actually would maybe recommend that folks give this a shot, because there are a lot of things that I really did like about the game. I liked all the mechanics, even though combat can sometimes be sort of wonky. And one thing to know about combat is if you go into combat without a variety of troops, that's probably going to lead to a long combat. But if you go with the different types of troops, like you have some foot soldiers, some tanks, and then like a blimp, you can get a blimp and stuff. If you have a variety there, it's going to be a little bit more interesting. So, and the rules do tell you that, but sometimes you don't really have a choice, or you just kind of forget, and you really want to take this thing out and so on, so you can get in kind of a slog. But if you played it as a full co-op, which I didn't have a chance to do, that I think actually might be a pretty fun game. You kind of increase the difficulty of the game, because during the course of the game, the Cthulhu monsters and stuff will come and try to ransack your different farms and stuff that you build around your rail line. But if you played it in a little bit more of a co-op way, and then that'll bump the difficulty up, and then that might actually be the way to actually play it. But because of the semi-co-opness of it, that has led to some like feel bad moments in the game that just nobody really feels good about, even the people not getting beat up. So, but I recommend it because it's so different, and well, I don't recommend it, but I recommend people try it. But it's so different and everything, it's worth trying. So that's Auztralia from Stronghold Games. The next game is Newton. This is from Simon Inc. And this is from the designers of, well, several different games. A couple of these designers kind of have helped out. I think I might get some of these wrong, like Marco Polo, Zolkin, Lorenzo, and a few other games. So they kind of like a little group of designers out there. And Newton I really liked as well. It's very abstract. It's kind of my one sort of caveat to it. And I don't mind the abstractness of it. But you're playing these cards, activating these powers, and moving stuff on like, I don't know, half a dozen different tracks and things. And then kind of building up a collection of these icons as you play cards. You'll play them over a few courses of rounds. And then you'll take one of the cards you played that round and kind of tuck it under your board. And the icon on that will stay available. And so that'll kind of power up other cards played with that icon and so on later in the game. So I think anybody that really likes a kind of a mechanics heavy, sort of point salad-y kind of Euro, it is kind of a point salad, then you would definitely like Newton. And I liked it well enough. But it did kind of lean a little bit on the abstract side for me to like wholeheartedly recommend it. Because it's like you're just sort of juggling all of these different tracks. And like sometimes you're sending out little explorers to go out and like visit different universities. And you have like little students on this other track, and they're kind of going up this sort of tech tree thing. And then you're collecting different kinds of books on your player board and so on. So it does come across feeling very, very abstract by the end of the game. And there's like a bunch of varieties and setups, and you shuffle up tiles for end game bonus points and all that kind of stuff. But it definitely is nowhere near a bad game or anything. It's very solid, very well put together. And again, I definitely recommend folks try it with the caveat that it's pretty abstract. So that's Newton there from Simon. The next game we're going to talk about here, we've got two more, is Carpe Diem. This is from Stefan Feld. And this kind of trickled out, at least over in the United States, at the end of last year, right about now. I believe it had a wider release there in Europe. And this is kind of a co-published from Ravensburger and Alea. And if you listen to my top 10 of 2018, you'll know that Forum Trajanum was on my top of last year. and this one would not make it on my top of last year, but it's still like a pretty good game. It has a very interesting mechanic that I've not really seen, where you sort of are on like kind of a rondelle. There's a thread on Board Game Geek to make it simpler than I probably could explain it, but you move these little pawns kind of back and forth across this circle, and then you can take tiles. And then you take tiles and you're going to add them to like your little board. So if you're thinking of like a Tetris or maybe kind of like Patchwork from Uwe Rosenberg, although the way you put stuff together is not like that. It's almost like doing your own little Carcassonne board in front of you. And you get little bonuses and things and trigger special abilities and all that. Now there's a thread on Board Game Geek that actually says it's easier to just kind of move stuff around a circle clockwise. Sure, I think that might be easier for some folks, but from reading the rules and just playing out how they're described in the rules, how you move your pawn around the circle, I thought it was pretty straightforward. But yeah, anyway, so there's a thread on Board Game Geek if you want to go look it up if you find that part confusing. But yeah, I like the game. It's better 2-player. It's not terrible at 3 and 4-player, but you can get into a certain point of the game where some people, especially when you play at 4-player, can just kind of get screwed out of bonuses at the end of the round. So you play over different courses of the round, and there's this kind of like grid of bonus cards, and you have to like put your little scoring token in between the cards to score the bonuses on either side. And if you can't, you get some negative points. And if you can, you get points. So running up that kind of initiative order so at the end of the round you get first choice of those cards is very important, but you have to kind of balance that with actually doing the stuff that would give you the bonus. Because if you get first choice but didn't really do much else, you're not going to score any bonuses and you're going to lose points. Whereas if you did a bunch of stuff and you're at the back of the order, then everybody's going to take the ones that you want, or just to screw you out of it, or they just take the one that you were going after, and then you're not going to score any bonus points anyway because you don't have the right stuff to align with the bonus card you're going to pick. So in the multiplayer games, that happens like a lot, and it just kind of like it feels like you can't really get around that, and then it becomes a sort of a little bit of an AP situation where you're just sort of mathing out stuff and doing it. But in a 2-player game, it does work a little bit better. I mean, it does scale fine because you add more tiles for more players, but it seemed like in a 2-player game, you can sort of stay out of each other's way a little bit and then be more precise in your attacks and in your preventing of what the other player's doing. So the 2-player game, I liked it a fair amount, but as the multiplayer, I definitely liked it more than some of the folks at the table. Some of the other folks at the table were like, yeah, they didn't really like it at all, especially because we kind of played it sort of back-to-back with Forum Trajanum, and that was much more liked and everything. So everybody, it's like, okay, well, which Steffenfeld are you going to pick? We'll be picking Forum Trajanum over Carpe Diem. But this is still one that I would recommend, especially for a 2-player situation. If you got like a spouse or something, I could see this being a very quick, you could probably play it in 30 minutes once you know the game. Quick back and forth. So even if you do get kind of screwed out of stuff and you kind of feel like it's unfair, then, the game's over quick enough. It's not that big a deal. But that's Carpe Diem. It definitely didn't blow me away, but it also didn't tick me off or anything either. And then the last game we're going to talk about is Beta Colony. This is from Rio Grande Games, from the designers of Fleet and a few other different games that they've come out with over the last few years. And this has a really cool central mechanic that I would really like to see repeated in a different game. Now, the rest of the game is just kind of like, sort of generic Euro stuff. And I will say, my one ding with this is, I don't know, I find like the board and everything like super ugly in this game. And I don't really like to get too much into art and stuff on board games because that's sort of eye of the beholder. And, sometimes if I'm playing a prototype, it doesn't really bother me. But, so it kind of talking out of both sides of my mouth there. But I don't know. I just don't really like the look of the board and everything because I kind of feel like they could have done more with it, like develop the art and stuff more. Now, the cool mechanic of it, which is where I think people should try the game, is one player will roll 4 dice. Each player has 4 different colored dice, and then one person rolls them, and then everybody else will take their dice and match exactly what they rolled. So if I rolled a black 5, a red 2, a green 3, whatever, you'll just have a black 5, a red 2, and a green 3. And then there's like a rondelle in the middle of the board, and you choose on your turn one of the dice to count the number of spaces that you move around the rondelle, and then another die to actually activate that space. And so based on the color and the number of the die, you're going to activate that space in a different way. And sometimes you get a bonus, so like, oh, if I land here, I get an extra point or something if I use the green die here. And you're just kind of traveling around, collecting goods, spending goods to put tiles out on like these 3 moons, because you're sort of like colonizing these different moons and stuff. And you'll put out little like production facilities and things like that. And then you're kind of doing like a little area control thing on those moons with those tiles. And then you're collecting like artifacts and stuff to get bonus points. And they'll kind of trigger off sort of how those tiles are arranged on the moon and stuff. And so, yeah, it's fun. My group was very split down on the middle with this game. But like I said, I really liked and enjoyed that core mechanism there, because it had a very sort of Castles of Burgundy kind of feel in a weird way, where you're like, because you can get fuel and stuff to mitigate the dice to either move around or to the dice you use to activate. And so you might stop in a spot and collect some fuel, or like on your turn, you can just burn both dice, stay where you are, and just collect fuel that way. So that was like, that's like collecting workers in Castles of Burgundy, let's say. And so kind of playing around with that, trying to sort of piece out your path for the round, because again, you get 4 dice. So you do one action using 2 dice, 1 to move, 1 to activate, and then it comes back to you. Use the other 2, move, activate. And so you try to piece that out based on, what the bonus cards are for that particular phase, which is really cool. That was another thing I really liked about it. So you have 3 cycles, because there's 9 rounds. So 3 rounds, 3 rounds, 3 rounds. And then they'll give you like a bonus for the first 3 rounds, and then you have a scoring at the end of the 3rd round. And then in rounds 4, 5, and 6, you get a different bonus, and then you get a different bonus scoring at the end of that round. So you're trying to balance that off, and like, oh, if I go here, I can get extra goods based on the bonus, or when I go here, I can spend like different, goods that become like more wild goods or whatever that you can spend to add the different factories to the moons and so on. So there's a cool kind of balance there between the dice that you get. How much fuel do I have? What do I want to get here? What are my bonuses? I need some artifacts to get these end game cards and stuff. So there's a lot really cool going on here. But like thematically and stuff, it just sort of fizzles out. And it just, after you play it a couple of times, it just kind of feels like, oh, this is a really cool mechanism in the middle. Then you just kind of sort of samey Euro stuff around, bolt on around the outside of it. So I think if you wanted like a Burgundy style game, and it's about that same kind of weight, I would definitely take a look at it, because I did enjoy it. I played it a couple times, and I think maybe a little bit of my group's attitude towards it sort of put me down a little bit further on it, because I do kind of see what they're saying about it just kind of being a little bit blah outside the main mechanic. But I definitely would recommend folks definitely take a look at it, because I think it's a good kind of medium weight dice game. That does feel kind of like a throwback to Castles of Burgundy or something like that. So that is Beta Colony from Rio Grande. So let's take a quick little break here, and then I'll kind of blow through my top 15 anticipated games of 2019. Okay, welcome back. So let's go through my top 15 games of 2019. And 15 is kind of an odd number, but I just kind of arrived at that. I had a couple more, and then I was just kind of, okay, am I really anticipating this that much? And so I just kind of happened to land right about the 15 mark. And I thought, well, that's a nice, fine cutoff. So let's jump into it. And so the first one, number 15, these are kind of in order. I tried to put them in some kind of order. Now, some of these, I should say, I have played once. I don't think I've played any of these more than once, like at Gen Con and stuff like that. Some of these I'm looking at them. I haven't actually had a chance to follow up and play them. And some of them were on the list and they showed up. So I'm like, oh, that's fortuitous. And then some of these are not coming out for a little while. And you'll kind of notice not a ton of Euros on here, because there's some. But obviously, the Euro releases are, at the end of the year. Like, we don't really know what's being released at Essen, so it's hard to say that I'm anticipated about it. And there's probably, like, somebody will say, what about this? And on Board Game Geek, there'll be, like, a paragraph, and I'll be like, yeah, I don't I don't know. There's no pictures, or anything. So I'm sure there's some Euros we know about. But anyway. So, then number 15, back on track, is Thunderstone Quest expansions. And I just kind of did a general category for that because there's a couple kind of coming out. I know that the co-op expansion, the solo co-op expansion is coming out. I know that there's another sort of add-on pack, like a 6th sort of quest line and stuff like that. I'm not quite sure how those are being released because they did Kickstarters, and then there's sort of a little bit of back and forth about how they release them in retail and stuff. And I didn't back the newest Kickstarter for it. But yeah, I'm super looking forward to kind of expanding and continue playing Thunderstone Quest. So that's number 15, Thunderstone Quest expansions. Number 14 is another expansion. This is for Everdell, and it's called Pearl Brook. And this looks really cool. I watched the Kickstarter for it. I didn't actually back it, but I'm definitely going to try to pick it up later in the year when it does come out. Looks really neat. It's got a little, if you know Everdell, it's got this giant tree with this like sort of forested area. And now you're going to tack on like a little river side to it. And it gives you kind of another currency that you can spend, some more action selection spaces, and some more cards and stuff. So yeah, I've played Everdell quite a bit over the last year. And so I'm at the point where I want an expansion because I kind of know like all the little combos and stuff that you can do. And which is good on the one hand because everybody kind of knows the cards now. And they can kind of know what people are going after and what to take and what to prevent and all that. But it'd be cool to, splash in some more variety to that. So that's Everdell Pearlbrook, number 14. Now, number 13 is, this one kind of shouldn't count, but it's Eclipse 2nd Edition. And so, yeah, I've really been looking forward to this coming out because it's got some of the expansions built in, little upgraded components and everything. The gameplay, from what I understand, is pretty much the same. And I've been kind of hankering to play Eclipse. I mean, my kind of Space 4X of choice right now is Forbidden Stars, which I haven't had a chance to play, I think, at all this past year. No, I didn't play it at all. But I've been hankering to play it, so that's a good sign. So I would like to try to play it this year. We've talked about it a little bit in the group playing Forbidden Stars. I would like to get back and play Eclipse again, and that's something that's been brought up in the group and mentioned as a desire to play. So I'm excited about playing Eclipse 2nd Edition to kind of round out a little bit of the rough edges, I think. And so that's number 13, Eclipse 2nd Edition. Number 12 is from Gale Force 9. I think it was a little bit delayed. There was some thought it would come out last year, and this is Aliens: Another Glorious Day in the Core. So this is basically. Looks like a co-op dungeon crawl set in the sort of time of the second Aliens movie. And so, which is a great movie. I love that movie. And it would be really fun to play an Aliens-themed game, which I have not played. I know there's been some over the years, but I have not played an Aliens-themed game. So I'm curious if Gale Force 9 can pull this off. I know that they've had their development folks leave and stuff, but I think hopefully whoever's still there is good. And they haven't really disappointed me too much with any of their games that they've come out with. So I'm excited to play it. They've got the Aliens IP. It's a co-op dungeon crawl, which is, those are a dime a dozen, but those are fun. And, it's got the Gale Force 9 backing it. So they'll probably do something kind of interesting and different with it. So that's Aliens: Another Glorious Day in the Core. Number 11 is Hellboy. And this is coming out for Mantic Games. And I'm not really into the Hellboy IP. I just, whatever. You can't love everything. So Hellboy seems like a cool thing. I don't know. The movies were kind of fun. But the designer is James Hewitt, who's done a lot of games that I've enjoyed. He did the original Warhammer Quest, Silver Tower. He's done Dreadball. He did Gore Chosen. He's done a few games on this kind of miniature skirmish, small box games that I've really liked. And he always has some kind of cool twist and wrinkle, some fun mechanic in there. And so it's Hellboy. I like the art and stuff of Hellboy. I like the look of it. And I like kind of the vibe of it. It's sort of a silly, weird, sort of superhero thing, but not really, it's Hellboy, right? So, yeah, I'm excited to try this and check it out and see if there's anything kind of interesting or different about Hellboy. So again, this is Hellboy. I think it's coming out later in the year. They had a Kickstarter and stuff last year, and it funded pretty successfully. Now, number 10 is actually a redo of an older game. This is called Samurai Battles. Now, this is a Richard Borg Commands and Colors system. And I actually have a review for the old version of Samurai Battles. That was a weird kind of hybrid game. It had two modes. It had the Commands and Colors mode and this, I can't remember the system. It's a Russian company that did it, Zavita. And that had a really interesting system as well. Now, this is being published by GMT, and it's not going to use miniatures. It's going to use stickered blocks. Now, I really liked Samurai Battles. If I have to pick my favorite Command and Colors series, it's going to be Battlelore, the second edition. But I think, I haven't thought about it too hard, but my second or third favorite would be Samurai Battles. It had some really interesting little wrinkles on mechanics, some of which you can actually see kind of evolve into what Battlelore has with the way they did the magic system in the second one. But they have a kind of a morale system and stuff like that, and there's like a way of like breaking the troops and all that. If you go look at my review of Samurai Battles, you'll kind of get some of the details there. It's a really old, terrible, crappy review. But I like the stickered blocks. I find that as a really interesting, the look and feel of it. Like, I don't know, like a lot of people are like, well, why wouldn't you like miniatures more than stickered blocks? I don't know what it is. I really like the aesthetic and the feel of these big chunky colored blocks. And the art is usually very smartly done on the stickers and stuff. And I don't know, I just really like that. And I'm excited to see this system come out, because this system works really well. This sort of the theme and the type of combat that you have, with like a little bit of ranged archer combat and a lot of melee combat and stuff. And the way that the Command and Color system sort of feels thematically, I think fits this sort of time frame and this kind of battle pretty well. So that's Samurai Battles. Definitely looking forward to that from GMT Games. And number 9 is the Shadows of Brimstone Forbidden Fortress. So if you've been listening to the channel for a while, you know I'm a huge Shadows of Brimstone fan. I've become more and more of a fan over the years. This is sort of the second launch or reissue of the system. Now, Shadows of Brimstone was set kind of in the Old West, but then you would explore caves and find different dimensions, and you'd get this black stone, and you would like get crazy magical bullets in your pistols and all this stuff. Like my character in the games we've been playing is a nun that wields a giant shotgun and all this stuff. So it's just really crazy. It's like this mishmash of themes, and you can land into an alien spaceship if you go through the wrong tunnel in the mines and stuff. So this is ported over to like kind of a samurai vibe. Oh, that's funny. I have two samurai games next to each other. And so you can mix and match these, though, with the Old West stuff. So you can have like, Calamity Jane and then a samurai together that happen to meet up in these caves and go fight. So yeah, I'm just super excited for that. And it's really the most RPG feeling dungeon crawl boxed game thing that I've felt. And if you watch the channel, I've reviewed a lot of these over the years. Blackstone Fortress obviously was my game of the year last year. But still, Shadows of Brimstone is like the most role-playing feeling of these kind of games, with just all the wacky, crazy stuff that can happen. You've got character sheets and experience points and different inventory, and really, I almost wish they didn't have cards for everything in the game. I could just throw the cards out, give me like a player's manual, and give me a character sheet, and I will still just play the same mechanics, that you've got in the box. Because it feels really like, after a while, this feels like a role-playing game with not crazy character intensive stuff. It's more hack and slash, but still, it still has that vibe. So anyway, so that's Shadows of Brimstone Forbidden Fortress. Number 8 is another Gale Force 9 game. This is Vault of Dragons. This is set in the Dungeons & Dragons universe. And if you ever played Sons of Anarchy from Gale Force 9, that came out a few years ago, it had this weird worker placement combat area control thing where you were different biker gangs that were sort of taking over different illicit businesses and fighting each other and stuff. This has some similar mechanics to it. I got a chance to look at it at Gen Con. And it's set in the D&D universe, so you're sort of competing against each other to be the first to sort of gather up your resources and stuff and go on these quests into this underground dungeon or something. And it looks really cool. So I'm pretty excited about that. I think this one's coming out pretty soon. I'm not sure. But I really did enjoy that mechanics. And it's a little bit more accessible of a game than like drug dealing jerk cuss word, biker criminals. So it should be a little bit more accessible. And just Dungeons and Dragons adventurers and stuff sort of backstabbing each other. But anyway, that's Vault of Dragons. Looking forward to that one quite a bit. Now, number 7 was just announced, not maybe a week or two ago, and I wouldn't have known about it, and I'm glad I know about it because now I'm anticipating it. It's Lord of the Rings: Journeys in Middle-earth, and this is a game from Fantasy Flight Games, and it's going to be an app-driven game, kind of like Mansions of Madness or maybe the new Descent or Imperial Assault apps. And of course, it's set in Middle-earth. Now, the cool thing is it's from the ground up, has been designed to work with the app. So out of those 3 games that I mentioned, Mansions of Madness, Descent, Imperial Assault, definitely the best of those in terms of the app play is Mansions of Madness. I still like Imperial Assault for, the normal game and the skirmish stuff. But if just talking about the app and how it works and how that gameplay works, Mansions of Madness just crushes those other 2. And it's really a fun, good time. And I think it's the best sort of integrated kind of app game. I think so. I mean, you can take stuff like Chronicles of Crime and stuff like that. That's really good too. But the app is the game, I guess, more in Mansions of Madness. I don't know. It's like a little bit more rooted in there. Like it has its little tentacles in the gameplay more. Where like in Chronicles of Crime or whatever, the gameplay still feels very much like discussion between players. And it's just kind of scripted there and just displayed, where the app in Mansions of Madness is really doing some thinking kind of behind the scenes and a little bit more reacting, I guess. I don't know. I have to think about that a little bit. But I think because Journeys in Middle-earth is kind of designed with that same thing in mind, we might get a really good similar feel to Mansions of Madness as what we might get in Journeys in Middle-earth. So I'm pretty excited about that, to see how much they really kind of push the envelope with the app-driven stuff. And it's Lord of the Rings, which I like. So that's number 7, Lord of the Rings, Journeys in Middle-earth. Number 6 is Gugong, and this is being brought over by Tasty Minstrel Games. I think this is this isn't the only Euro, but it's one of the few Euros on this list. This is coming really soon. So I'm very excited about that. Some of my group mates had the chance to play it over at a convention over in the Seattle area at the end of last year. I didn't have a chance to go to that, but it's from the same designer as Hansa Teutonica and Firenze, I think was the other game I liked of his. So yeah, I'm always pretty excited about his stuff, just to kind of see what he's doing. And honestly, that's the only reason I'm excited about it. Is based on word of mouth from some of my friends, and then it's from the same designer as Hansa Teutonica. So I'm like, well, okay, if you guys liked it, we all like Hansa Teutonica. And so this should be a good one, good time to play. So that's Gugong. Again, it's being brought over by Tasty Minstrel here pretty soon. Number 5 is from Awakened Realms, and this is Tainted Grail. This was on Kickstarter right at the end of last year. If you know, I really liked Lords of Hellas from them last year, and then the Edge Dawnfall I also really liked. This is kind of like their take on Seventh Continent, where you have a very story-driven, card-driven, kind of narrative adventure, but also with these giant, ridiculous miniatures. And I've had a chance to kind of look through some of the material for it, and it looks pretty interesting in terms of what the story is going to be and all that kind of stuff. And it just looks, I don't know, it's like kind of a very kind of grim dark kind of vibe. And I kind of missed out on Seventh Continent, and I've heard from some of my friends that they really have enjoyed it. So hopefully Tainted Grail kind of will meet that kind of high standard by Seventh Continent and tell a really interesting story and just be kind of engaging in that way. And I haven't really played, I think because I haven't played Seventh Continent and I've liked the other Awakened Realms games for the most part, then that's a reason for me to get excited about it. It would be nice to have this kind of nice, just kind of narrative, even if it's a little linear, I don't know that I would mind that much. But I'm just kind of very curious about this style. It's like a giant choose-your-own-adventure game with an epic scope and lots of gameplay and cool miniatures and all that kind of fun stuff. So that's Tainted Grail, number 5. And then number 4 is coming from Plat Hat Games. This is Comanauts. And I did have a chance to try this at Gen Con last year, and I'm actually looking at the box here. This is a really very different game. And what is a co-op game, and it's an adventure book game, kind of like the gosh, I can never remember the name of this game. That's from the same designer as this game. It's Fabled Tales. Gosh, I don't know why I can't. I never played it. That's why I can't remember the name. That was kind of like a children's book that you would do an adventure through, and you have these little pawns, and you'd go on the little map on the book and do these dice actions and stuff. This is different. It's a little bit more of an adult theme. There's a guy that was working on some giant machine to save Earth from exploding or something, and then through the use of that machine in his experiments, he's now slipped into a coma. He's the only one that can activate the machine and save the Earth. And the accident also created a black hole in the middle of the Earth, which is slowly expanding. So you go through these kind of like mental telepathy machines because you and the rest of the players have like this empathetic, telepathic kind of, some symbiosis with this doctor. And you need to save him or else Earth is going to perish. And you've got to kind of work through this sort of psychological damage that's been done and kind of work through his childhood memories and stuff and some traumas and things. So it's a really interesting game. And I'm very excited to get this to the table really soon and play through it and just kind of work through the story of it and all that kind of stuff and just kind of experience that in a different way. I've gotten through the rules now more formally and stuff, so I'm still just as excited about it. That's number 4, Comanauts. Number 3 is Underwater Cities, and this is being brought over by Rio Grande Games, and I had a chance to play this once last year, and I'm really excited for this one. This one would have been high up my list of 2018 games, I think, if I'd had a chance to play it a little bit more, and also if it was out. It's not really out in the United States. I don't really count it as 2018 because it's nowhere to exist, even though it says on Board Game Geek it's 2018. So it's really cool, like a worker placement card game, and I can already recommend this. Like, I want to play it some more to kind of be more formal in my reviewing or whatever. But yeah, I definitely recommend Underwater Cities 100%. If you like a good, solid, heavy-ish, not super heavy, but it's a little heavy, Euro with some really smart, innovative mechanics, definitely take a look at Underwater Cities. And it's really pretty to look at and everything, too. So that's number 3, Underwater Cities. Number 2 is Claustrophobia 1643. This is one I did back on Kickstarter. I should actually have it in... when this goes live, I might actually have it by the time this actually goes live. So Claustrophobia, the original one, is a 2-player sort of dungeon crawl, just head-to-head. That's it. One player plays like a demon, the other one controls a party of characters, and you work through some scenarios. It's just kind of a head-to-head combat game. It's more of a skirmish combat game than a dungeon crawl, although it's kind of both. So I'm very much looking forward to the new edition of it. It looks fantastic. The miniatures aren't pre-painted like they were in the original. It looks like there's some solid updates to the mechanics with the card play and the dice play. It's kind of like you're playing Kingsburg or something, or gosh, I don't know. What are some other games like Alien Frontiers, but it's like a dungeon crawl, so it's got some real interesting streamlined mechanics, or like Warhammer Quest Silver Tower, that sort of thing. So anyway, I'm very much looking forward to that. Claustrophobia 1643, that's my number 2. Number 1, which I also backed on Kickstarter, is Time of Legends Joan of Arc. I had a chance to play this also at Gen Con, and it kind of blew me out of the water. It's a very small scale miniatures combat game. You have giant hexes and stuff that you're on, and it's sort of like playing like Battle Lore or something. So, they're smaller scale than like a 28 millimeter, and so you have these different like clumps of troops and units and stuff. But the amount of like narrative and just the wrinkles and stuff that you can do in the different scenarios is just amazing. It's very thematic, and the way that the different thematic wrinkles in the different scenarios work and how they translate kind of mechanically, I thought was just awesome. I mean, the miniatures themselves look really cool. The like different terrain pieces and the different tiles and the cards and everything, and the way that the general system works and the back and forth of you have like this. I don't remember what it's called because I don't have the game, but there's like this sort of like initiative track, like you like push and pull to get kind of steal initiative and stuff. So there was like. It kind of like similar to Claustrophobia. There's like some really smart Euro-like mechanics in this, combat game, and with a lot of theme in this particular case in terms of, like I said, the way that you can kind of do a bunch of the narrative stuff The one takeaway from it was like when we played it and we got done, it was like, yeah, we were competing, but we still really felt like we were telling a story over the course of the game. And that's kind of the one thing I really have enjoyed about playing miniatures games over the last couple of years is when you can get a game in that's still very like a competition, but both players are still invested in the narrative as well as just the mechanics and winning. And so the narrative itself, I thought was really cool. So I'm like, this is good because this is getting to kind of the stuff that some of the Age of Sigmar, Necromunda, Frostgrave kind of thing gets at, is that real steeping, strong narrative bite with some smart gameplay and smart mechanics. So, okay, that's my top 15 anticipated games from 2019. I do have an honorable mention, the Mother of Dragons expansion for Game of Thrones. We're probably going to try to play that here in the next month. But I've kind of had that for a couple of weeks, so I didn't really feel like putting it on the list. I have had a chance to glance at the rules and stuff. It looks really cool. So we're going to try to play. Well, actually, we might try to play it next week and do a lower player count. Because the expansion supposedly fixes some of the issues playing with less than 6. So we'll see. But yeah, so that's the top 15 plus the honorable mention. I hope folks have a good 2019. I hope everybody has a good luck with the Gen Con housing, which is coming up in a couple of days. And I'm crossing my fingers for a good spot so I can get a good room. And anyway, so I've gotten screwed kind of the last couple of years out of that. Which whatever. Now that I've spoken out loud about it, it's probably some karma coming my way. But anyway, hope everybody has a good year. Take care of yourselves, and definitely leave any comments and games that you're looking forward to. Maybe that I didn't mention, because like I said, it's hard to know what's coming out, and a lot of times they don't announce stuff until that year, or this is coming out in 2 months or next month, because you don't want to announce stuff too soon, right? Because then people will forget. So that is it. Have a good one. Thanks.